It all started on a quiet Saturday afternoon when I decided to host a barbecue at my ranch for a few close friends, most of whom, like me, happened to work in law enforcement. The weather was perfect, the grill was fired up, and the laughter of off-duty officers echoed across the open land. We weren't causing any trouble, just a group of folks enjoying a rare break from the daily chaos of the job. But just as the burgers were hitting the grill, trouble showed up in the form of a woman none of us expected, Karen from the HOA. Now, let me be clear. My ranch is well outside the HOA's jurisdiction. It's private property, far from there. Gated community, and I've owned it for years. But apparently, that didn't stop Karen. She drove right up to my front gate like she owned the place. Arms crossed, face tight with judgment. She started shouting about unauthorized gatherings, noise complaints, and even claimed we were threatening neighborhood peace. I reminded her, as calmly as possible, that she had no authority here. But instead of leaving, she whipped out her phone and called 911 on us. The irony: every single person at my ranch that day was either an active duty officer or retired from the force. We were the department she just called the cops on. What happened next? Let's just say things escalated in a way she did not expect. She thought she was making a power move. Instead, she walked straight into a backyard full of badges and training, and not a single person willing to let her push people around. But the real twist: it wasn't just about the barbecue. Karen had a much bigger plan in mind, and we weren't about to let her get away with it. Stick around because you won't believe what happened next. Now, to understand just how wild this all got, you've got to know a little more about Karen. She's not just your average HOA busybody. She's the type who memorizes the community rulebook and walks around with a measuring tape to make sure your grass height is within regulation. She's caused problems for almost every neighbor in her subdivision, but nobody really pushes back. Most people just try to avoid her. I didn't think I had to worry, since my ranch sits miles outside the HOA's reach. But apparently, Karen's ego travels farther than her authority. Turns out, he'd recently been elected HOA president, and since then, she'd gotten even more bold. Word was, she was trying to get the county to rezone properties near the community mine included too. Bring them under HOA influence. A few neighbors warned me, but I didn't take it too seriously at first. I figured she couldn't possibly mess with a ranch that's been in my name for years. Still, I noticed she started driving by more often, slowing down at my gate, scribbling things in a little notebook. She even snapped photos of vehicles coming and going, so when she showed up that day during the barbecue, acting like she had some kind of legal authority to shut us down, it didn't feel like a random incident. It felt planned, calculated, almost like she was trying to start something on purpose. And when the 911 call went out, it didn't just go to any dispatcher. It came through our own network, and that's when things really got tense. We didn't want to escalate anything, but we also weren't about to let her twist the story or claim something dangerous was happening. What we didn't know was just how far she was willing to go, and the secrets she was hiding would soon come to light. The moment that 911 call hit the system, our radios lit up. One of the guys at the barbecue mic who still works patrol picked up the call on his unit. He froze mid-bite, looked over at me, and said, "You're not going to believe this, but she just reported a disturbance at your ranch. Claims there's an armed group threatening her safety." Everyone went quiet. That's a heavy accusation, especially when the people being accused are sworn officers, some still active duty, others retired with honor. We knew we had to take it seriously, even if it sounded ridiculous. Just the mention of armed group could bring down a serious response. The last thing we needed was for an uninformed unit to show up thinking this was some dangerous standoff. We immediately contacted dispatch directly, explained the situation, and let them know this was a personal property matter, nothing criminal happening. No threats, no weapons drawn, just off-duty personnel having a cookout. Still, protocol is protocol, and once a 911 call is made, someone's got to check it out. That's when Deputy Rosa was dispatched to respond, someone we all knew well. She was just as puzzled when she arrived at the gate and saw familiar faces, waving her in. Meanwhile, Karen stayed outside, arms flailing, pointing toward the house, acting like she had just uncovered a crime scene. Rosa kept her cool, walked her away from the gate, and tried to get her story straight. But Karen wasn't interested in explaining. She was accusing, loudly, saying we were breaking laws, holding unauthorized military-style gatherings, and that she'd be pressing charges. The craziest part, she kept referencing documents. She said proved she had authority, here zoning papers, maps, even supposed court filings. That's when we started to realize this wasn't just about one bad afternoon. Karen was up to something much bigger, and it looked like she'd been planning it for weeks, maybe months, while Rosa tried to de-escalate things at the gate. The rest of us gathered near the porch, watching from a distance. Nobody wanted to interfere, but you could feel the tension rising. Karen's voice carried across the property, accusing us of trespassing on our own land, demanding arrests and insisting that she had legal documentation giving the HOA control over parts of the surrounding ranch land. It made no sense. This land's been in my family for over 2 decades, fully registered and fenced off with clear markers. Yet here she was, shouting about zoning loopholes and enforcement powers. Mike and I exchanged a look. Something's not right, he said under his breath, and he was right. Rosa asked her one simple question: "Can I see the documents?" And Karen's entire tone changed. She clutched a manila folder like it held the keys to the universe, but wouldn't hand it over. She kept flipping through pages, pulling out one sheet, then tucking it back in. Something about it felt off. If these papers were real, she'd be showing them off proudly. Instead, she kept dodging, changing the subject, and throwing out legal terms like she was reading from a script. That's when another truck pulled up. My cousin, Eric, who works in county land records. I had called him earlier, just in case. He stepped out and calmly asked to see whatever paperwork Karen had. She got visibly flustered. "You have no jurisdiction," she snapped. But Eric held up his badge and said, "Actually, I do. I'm the one who signs off on every property survey within 10 miles of this ranch." Karen froze. Then suddenly, without warning, she tried to make a phone call, dialing someone, pacing in circles, whispering frantically. That's when Rosa leaned in to tell us she recognized Karen's name from a zoning inquiry filed weeks ago, one flagged for suspicious activity. Now, all eyes were on that folder. And whatever was in it was about to bring everything to a boiling point. Karen clutched that folder like her life depended on it, eyes darting between us like she was trying to calculate her next move. The phone call she was making, it didn't go unnoticed. Eric stepped closer, trying to calmly ask again for the documents, but Karen snapped, "You're all in on this. This land was supposed to be cleared for development months ago." That line stopped everyone cold. "Development?" I asked, stepping forward. "What development?" Karen looked like she realized she'd said too much, but it was too late. Eric turned to me, his face tight. "That's the same address that came up in a rezoning request a few weeks ago. 'Twas pushed through fast and usually fastened it. Listed a private developer's name, but the paperwork looked sketchy, so it was flagged." He didn't need to say more. The implication was clear. Someone had been trying to fast-track a land grab, and my ranch was at the center of it. Karen suddenly turned defensive. "This land isn't being used to its full potential. We're trying to improve the neighborhood, bring value to the community. You don't even live here full-time." Her tone cracked. This wasn't about noise or barbecue or even HOA rules. This was about money. A development deal. And someone, maybe Karen. Maybe others stood to gain a lot if my land ended up under HOA or county development control. But before we could press her for answers, a black SUV rolled up fast and parked at the edge of the property. Out stepped a man in a suit, clipboard in hand, walking with purpose. He didn't greet anyone, just made a beeline straight for Karen, speaking low and fast. Karen's expression shifted from smug to pale. She started backing away, waving him off, saying, "Not here, not now." That's when it hit us. Karen wasn't acting alone. And whoever this guy was, he had a stake in this too. Whatever scheme was playing out, it went deeper than just an overreaching HOA president. We were staring at something much bigger, and it was far from over. The man in the suit tried to steer Karen toward his SUV, but by now, everyone was watching. Rosa stepped in and calmly said, "Sir, I need to know who you are and what your business is here." He hesitated for a second, then flashed a contractor badge and mumbled something about land assessment. Eric caught a glimpse of his clipboard and immediately snatched it. "This is a purchase proposal," he said, flipping through the pages. "Signed by Karen, this is an attempt to buy the ranch as abandoned property under a zoning loophole." My stomach dropped. That's what all of this had been about. Karen had filed fake complaints and started a paper trail to make it look like my land was being neglected or misused. With the right connections and just enough push, she'd been working to mark my ranch as eligible for acquisition without even telling me. She probably figured I'd get tired of fighting and sell. But since that didn't work, she tried to stir up trouble with a 911 call, hoping to get some kind of police record on the property, something she could use as leverage. Rosa didn't wait. She called for backup and reported potential fraud. Karen panicked. She tried to grab the folder back from Eric and started yelling that we were violating her rights. But the contractor, realizing the game was up, quietly stepped back and slipped into his SUV. What none of us expected, though, was that another deputy who had just arrived recognized him immediately. "That's Dale Morton," he said. "He was under investigation last year for shady land deals near the highway expansion project." Within minutes, Karen and Dale were both being questioned separately. The folder full of forged signatures and fake plats. She wasn't just misinformed. She was knee-deep in a scheme to flip land for profit using dirty HOA influence. And the twist: one of the silent investors listed on the proposal was none other than Karen's own brother on the county planning board. The truth came crashing down fast. Hey, and her plan unraveled right there on my front lawn. But the real surprise was just beginning. Within the hour, Karen and Dale were both taken in for questioning. The county planning board was notified. And Eric made sure every document they tried to use against my property was flagged and removed. From the system, investigators quickly uncovered a trail of similar attempts in nearby areas, all tied back to the same group, Karen's brother included. Turns out, this wasn't the first time they tried to take advantage of landowners using legal loopholes and shady paperwork. But this time, they messed with the wrong ranch. As for my place, the records were cleared and protected under new county oversight. Eric helped push through a security clause that officially declared my property outside of any HOA boundaries or influence permanently. Rosa made sure the 911 call was documented for what it really was: a false report made in bad faith, and our little barbecue. We finally got to finish it that evening, just with a few extra laughs and one less unwanted guest. The neighbors who had been quiet before started speaking up too. Turns out, Karen had tried to push similar agendas with them, but nobody had known how deep it went. Her removal from the HOA presidency was swift, and a formal complaint was filed with the state against her brother's involvement. If there's one thing I took away from all this, is that you never really know what someone's willing to do for power or money. But you also never know how strong a community can be when people stand up together. So HOA Karen called 911 on my ranch, thinking she could intimidate us. What she didn't know was, this land was full of cops, records, and receipts. And in the end, truth did what it always does. It showed up, loud and clear.